Welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC, a digital series exploring tech's most notable trends, new innovations, digital transformations, lean agile principles and mindsets, the future of work, and more. We'll introduce next-gen leaders from member companies of the Northern Virginia Technology Council and learn about the great impact they are making in our region. I'm your host, Philip Nathram.
Welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. Today's episode will feature Unanet's Chief Product Officer, Asad Jerohian, and GovCon Industry Director, Rich Wilkinson. And as always, we'll have our Did You Know segment at the end. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Accenture, Unanet, and our media partner, iHeartMedia. You can find all of our episodes on the iHeartMedia podcast app. Now, I'm excited to introduce today's speakers, Unanet, Asad Jerohian, and Rich Wilkinson. Good to have you both. Asad, you're out in Denver. Is that home base for you?
Out in Colorado. Home base is where most of where our people are, which in this case is over 40 states. So, yeah, my team at least.
Yeah, well, actually, you're not in Denver, Colorado. You're somewhere else. I can't remember where you told me.
Yeah, Durango, small little mountain town southwest, 6 hours away, deep in the mountains, and thankfully has enough flights out to the DMV area. So
yeah. That's good stuff. But Rich, you're around the Beltway here in Northern Virginia?
I'm about 10 miles west of Dulles Airport in a little rural corner of Loudoun County. My neighbor across the road has 800 acres and cows. My nearest neighbor is a quarter mile away. So I'm not that different than Durango.
Yeah. So you guys are basically living in the same spot, just in different states. You know, I kind of want to paint a picture of how you guys, you said a little bit about what you were doing before. I want to paint the picture of how you got to Unanet, but I think the best place to start is, what is Unanet? What does that mean? What does this word mean? And what do you guys do over
there? I'll take a first stab at that one. So if you think about the project management life cycle of where project-based businesses have to win business and then execute on those projects, deliver, and then repeat that. That's where Unanet kind of comes in, where we build software that makes our customers successful in doing that. One major industry that we operate in is in government contracting, where we build software so that government contractors can optimize the way they do business with the government in terms of delivering services, as well as continue to repeat new and win new business. And Unanet's been around, I believe, more than 30 years now.
Yeah. And does Unanet, do you know, what's the origin of this name, right? It sounds like one net.
So that's the motivation where the founder, Fran Craig, the whole point of Unanet is one single way to put in all of your time entry pretty quickly. That's how it started out in the early days. And we've added a lot more functionality since then to help our customers get successful. But it's still one system.
Yeah. And Rich, you've been with Unanet for a long time now, right?
Well, about going on 7 years.
Yeah.
I've been all the way around the GovCon table, 8 years as a contracting officer, 10 as a corporate controller in some of the larger firms in the Washington area. But for the last almost 30 years, I've been in the software business. I used to compete with Unanet, and now I'm part of Unanet. And I have to tell you, of all the organizations I've worked with or in the last almost 40 years now, this is hands down the best company I've ever been part of.
Yeah. What are some of the things, like what are you enjoying about it that, maybe you didn't even know you wanted or didn't, we don't know what we don't know. What are some of those things over the last 7 years that you can say, man, I'm really glad I'm here for?
Well, the culture is a tremendous part of what makes Unanet the company it is. But it's also a company that's very agile, very flexible. It can turn on a dime, and we do when we need to. It shows in the products and in the support we offer.
Yeah. Well, Asad, you're newer than Rich, right? I mean, what's been your experience so far? I saw you shake your head as soon as he said the word culture. What does that mean to you? I mean, we use these words, right? But no one really describes for us what that means. And if there's a younger person listening, what can they learn about? I mean, they need a job. What are they going to?
I've been here 3 years. In Unanet world, that's almost, in a normal world, that's probably 9 to 10. Because of just the pace of what we're operating, the amount of positive disruption I think that we are continuing to create with the growth of our customer base and they themselves. So you mentioned, so I shook my head when Rich was talking about culture. So being, what I do is I come into businesses and I help transform those businesses and leave a positive mark for the industry and the customers. That's what my career has been. And when evaluating to come to Unanet, there was the two elements. One was the industry, but the other was around the culture. So our founder, friend Craig, had created a really interesting culture. So here is a female computer scientist in the 80s trying to start a software company, right? You can only think about all the challenges, and she made it happen. And she did it in a way because she said things are grounded in positivity. So when you're looking at a problem, it's not really a problem, it's an opportunity. And when you walked around the hallways here and you would ask people like, hey, we could do this better and the likes, there wasn't a negative element. It's like, you're all right, there's an opportunity, let's go get it. And that's the big thing. The second is that sense of purpose that this culture provides, right? We're working for an industry that's serving our government, that is trying to make America and keep America one of the best places in the world to live. That's a pretty strong mission. And so when we are working on doing things and making them more efficient, you can see how it translates to the purpose of what people are doing here. And that's really deeply rooted in this culture of positivity and of the fact that we are doing things for a really good cause.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's something that, when you're in the GovCon industry, I think a lot of people don't, we're around the DC area, at least, we are. And around the Beltway, I've had the opportunity to be pretty close to a lot of NatSec government contractors and people that were within the government and our military over the last few years. And the sense of purpose and meaning behind that mission and what they're actually doing and why they're doing what they're doing just seems to run through everything they're doing. And a lot of times in a commercial company, or just if you're from the outside, you may not be able to see that. It might look like any other company, or might look like just any other service provider, but there's a different sense of purpose and meaning behind what they're doing, especially like national security, for example. There's no greater mission, right? And you'll hear things like that, it's just ingrained in their culture. So that's awesome. When you were describing what you guys do and the software that you develop, I tried to relate it like, to something that I would think of or experience in a commercial industry and, any service provider, right? Let's say it's not, you're doing projects or you're a service provider, so you win a certain opportunity with someone, you need to be able to onboard them. Hopefully you have some sort of CRM, sales and marketing tool to communicate with them, a project management tool to track progress and different stages of that project. Then you're billing, and depending on how you're billing, right? Maybe you get paid up front for a certain portion and then you're billing over time. It could be structured in any way. And then hopefully it's ongoing or cross-selling. And a lot of times you need to have multiple tools to do that, or you try to get it all in one. Is that something similar to what you guys are providing, but in a GovCon industry? Like, are you servicing the GovCon contractors or the actual government? Like, where does it's the Gauge software, I think, is what you're talking about the most. Where does that fit in?
The big thing we have is, so one, to answer the question, working backwards, we service government contractors who are doing work for our government. Mm-hmm. And there are different agencies there. Our customers have both government contracts as well as some commercial work, but mostly tied to government spending there. And there are professional services firms that basically win opportunities where they're delivering a particular set of services tied to a particular project. And so if you think about it, that's that entire life cycle where it starts with the CRM, but then you have a lot of professional services automation, which is tied to time in and bill out. You're collecting time, understanding accrual costs, all of these other things associated with those projects, so you can send an invoice out. And then the full the GL there, where you can actually do all of your financials functions that are needed to run any business. So that suite of functionality is what we call Unanet.
Yeah, Phil, I'm an industry director at Unanet, and my focus is GovCon. But a lot of what I do is directly translatable to the commercial marketplace. Government contractors are really just project-based businesses. We do things for clients, we bill them for what we do, and our client just happens to be a very, very picky customer. When you do business with the government, nobody looks over your shoulder more than the government does over government contract. You know that.
Yeah.
But in the commercial world, a lot of the things we do are directly translatable. One of the things that Unanet lets me do, that's sort of compensation for the things they make me do, is the Gauge report. We do an annual survey every year called Gauge. It's not a software product, it's a survey and an annual report. And it's about the industry that I've been involved in for almost 40 years now. It's about how are you doing? What are you doing? How large are you? How many people do you have? How many of those people are in the accounting function? Those kinds of questions. We've been doing it now for 6 years. So we've got a pretty neat data mine that's really useful to government contractors or project-based businesses in general. You know, a lot of the things we do are all about winning the next contract in GovCon. You have to win. In GovCon, the watchword is grow or die. Okay? And we say, if you're going to win, you have to do three things. You have to know your customer, you have to know your competition, and you have to know yourself. And of those three, knowing yourself is probably the hardest of the bunch. Looking at yourself and being introspective is difficult, and it really helps to have a benchmark. That's what Gauge is all about. We gather the data, we package it up, we write about it, we interpret it, we put it out there so project-based businesses can look at that data and benchmark themselves against other companies like themselves, same size, same headcount, and just see how they compare. Where could they improve? How are they doing relative to the rest of the companies like them? Maybe it's companies they compete with, maybe it's companies they partner with or would like to.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a great way to identify teaming partners for other things that they want to do. And then also, yeah, I mean, you guys are big on metrics. And I think we were talking earlier, you can't improve what you can't measure, right? And that goes for ourselves as individuals, as well as our companies, right? If you're not keeping track of, how long is it taking you to win a contract? How long is it taking you to staff that contract? How long are certain projects taking you, and how can you shorten that time? What are things that sometimes we just get stuck in doing things the way that we do them, not necessarily because they're the most efficient. It's just the way that we've been doing them.
We're really digging down to those tiny facts and factors and metrics when we probably should back off and look at some of the big stuff like what's a healthy portfolio for a GovCon firm? Do you have individual contracts or do you have IDIQs? And you're in a constant treadmill looking for the next delivery order. We were pretty surprised this year. It was around between 60-40 individual contracts and IDIQs for the smaller firms, up to about 50-50 for the larger firms. We were a little bit surprised because it kind of feels like today we live in a delivery order world, but there's still a lot of individual discrete contracts being competed for and won out there. And most of the companies have a pretty healthy balance in that portfolio.
How are you guys going about getting this information? Or like when a company has access to this, what do they see?
Well, it's a survey. We do an annual survey. It's all electronic. It's out in the ether, and it's all anonymized. So when you see it, you see data collected for the industry, and it's strictly statistics and graphs. There's no individually identifiable information anywhere in there. This year, we had about 1,170 participants in the survey. So we can look at this data, and we'd be pretty confident that it's not, when we see a trend, it's not on a data anomaly. There's enough companies in this sample that you can look at it and go, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what's causing it.
And how, so when they interpret that data, how can they utilize, what Unanet has to offer to make decisions around it or improve those process? If they identify that maybe they're not at 60/40, right? Maybe they're just way too heavy into IDIQ and they're just hoping and praying they get another task order and that they can fill it and bill it.
Yeah.
When they come to you, Assad, what can they do? Like, how can they get better?
Yeah, this is all about the pursuit process, Bill. How many projects do you pursue? How many do you win? How do you find out about those? And we have a very strong CRM offering to help support that. I'll let Assad talk about that a little bit. One of the interesting things that grew out of this year's gauge was win rates. 4 years ago, win rates were, in my mind, not very good. About 75% of our respondents said they win about half the time. Well, that's a coin toss. You probably shouldn't be winning at that rate. On the other hand, the BD folks tell you if you're winning 90% of everything you go after, you're cherry picking. You're not being aggressive enough. You ought to lose one every now and then if you're being sufficiently aggressive. So if you look at your portfolio and you need more discrete contracts, that helps guide your pursuit. And we have some products like the CRM offering that help pursue those contracts. But it all starts with, what do I go after? And can I win it? Assad?
Yep, precisely, Rich. And I think, so when you're looking at the data that's coming out of the report, you're basically either saying, why are my competitors doing better than I am in winning these deals and the rate that they're winning and the amount of deals? Or how do I continue to maintain the edge that I have? And the good news is, at least from my perspective, the CRM component of Unanet really helps you do that. And so if you're winning a lot of business, what we're we'll do is we'll show you where you're winning the most and your best chances of repeating that business. So we're going to go and comb, and this is the market intelligence component we're saying is, we're trying to make sure what you're about to go bid on in terms of a proposal, the likelihood of you winning based on your past experience is much greater. Second, we're going to let you know that what other things that you should potentially be bidding on that you've never bid in the past, that you have a strong likelihood of bidding. And then you're managing that through your whole BD process with the amount of staff that you have. So the idea here is, if you're already winning a decent amount of contracts and you want to continue to grow, our tool helps you find like-for-like contracts that will help you continue to have that winning rate. And for ones that are trying to really improve that winning rate, we are showing you like-minded contracts that you didn't bid on in the past, but given the skill sets and the type of work you do, the chances of you winning that are higher. And we also have a proposal management solution that helps you get those proposals out the door to prove that you've had a past track record to the people that are looking at your bid.
No, that's great. I mean, I think of that as like doubling down on our strengths. The idea is not to take all of your strengths and turn them into weaknesses. It's to find those top 3 or 4 things that you do really well and go all in on that, and then delegate and help support and supplement everything else. And I think as a company, it sounds like you're giving them the opportunity to do the same thing. If you look at where you've won and what's available in the market, and you're making a direct correlation between, here are contracts that are similar, or here are contracts that need the strengths that you have, you should go after these instead of all of those over there, you'll win more and you'll have a singular focus. Am I understanding like where you're coming in to help them see the data, use it, and then make a better decision with it?
I think that's absolutely right. And of course, I've spent most of my career on the accounting side. So you can't just win it, throw it over the transom to the accounting guys and say, okay, now take it and run with it. There's got to be a handoff. There's got to be a process, and you don't want that to be manual. You want your system where you've been tracking and processing and pursuing that opportunity. When you win it, to move that over into the ERP without a lot of manual intervention, so you can win today, start tomorrow, not start next month. And that's part of the whole end-to-end process here at Unanet.
Well, I think, I mean, now I'm kind of understanding Unanet, OneNet, where you have your BD, you have your capture, and then you have your delivery people all in one system. You then have your accounting all in one system. So nobody's sitting there saying, well, you didn't upload it to the other thing that we're using, or I forgot my password to that, but I put it in this one. And that alone, right? That's one day, but one day turns into a week, and every week that you don't send out an invoice is probably another month that you don't get paid, which means what are you going to do? You got to draw down from a line of credit. Now you're paying interest. Now you got other problems that you need to deal with. And it's not that the government didn't pay you. You just didn't send them what you needed to get that money.
Yeah, exactly.
What about commercial businesses and their size, right? The government contracting industry has a certain qualification for what is small business, what is large, and there's this huge in between. What do you do with the commercial end, and how does this apply? And we've talked about GovCon and how it specifically can help them based on their procurement process. But commercial industry is different. I could pitch someone tomorrow and they could agree to hire me the next day after that. Like, how can I utilize what you guys have as well?
Yeah, it would seem to be very different, but it's not as different as you might think. First of all, you really use the small versus not small criteria the government does, because that's done at the NAICS code level, contract by contract, and it varies so much by what companies do. Management consulting, for example, is what, 7.5 million. Another discipline for a different contract might be 35 employees or 50 employees. So we break it just by revenue bands, and that's pretty translatable to the commercial marketplace. They have the same sort of annual revenue classifications that we would see there, and the problems are the same. If you're project-based, you sell it first, and then you go do it. It's not like manufacturers where they make it first and then go try to sell it. We have to do the sale first, and then we staff up, and then we go do the project, and then try to collect the money for it. We have a little bit of an edge there in the government contract world because our customer is a pretty reliable payer. In the commercial world, you have to worry about non-payment from time to time and bad debts, and we don't have that very much in GovCon. But other than that, the basics are pretty much the same. That win rate, for example, if you've got a small company telling you, we only win 3 in 10. I was talking the other night to an old friend of mine who spent his entire career in business development for GovCons, and I told him that. He immediately said, they're not focused. They're outside their swim lanes. They're going after things they're not qualified for. Their capabilities and qualification statements don't fit the solicitations they're bidding on. And that's why their win rate's down in the 3s and 4s. It should be in that 60 to 70% level. That says you're in your swim lane, you know what you're doing, but you're aggressive enough to lose one every now and then.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to what Assad was saying earlier of knowing your strengths and going after the things that make sense for you to go after and growing organically that way. And I think you're right, Rich. I mean, a lot of people sometimes, and even in business, it's so easy to fall into, to take that shiny object and think, well, if I get past performance doing this bigger contract or doing this other thing, then I can qualify for more that are more along those lines because I feel like the bill rates are higher, or I feel like there's a reason why I can grow faster. And I think that exists in commercial world also. But what you're saying is, you're going about it the wrong way. You're trying to do something. You can't get orange juice from a cow, right? If you want to be in the milk industry and the orange juice industry, okay, and there's a process to do that, but you don't get one from the other. Bread
Right.
is, Home Depot doesn't sell bread and eggs.
And if you're a big company and if you're in the cow business and you want to be in the orange juice business, go buy an orange juice producer.
Yeah.
And that's how the larger companies tend to see the growth process. They'll go to the edges of their swim lanes where perhaps they're not as they could be, and they'll buy a company that is and expand the swim lane.
And on that front, that's where we've taken that into account over the last 2 years, where we're seeing a lot of M&A activity within our space.
Right.
And so we've built functionality in so that you can absorb a business pretty quickly that's running either on Unanet or that the prime or the main buyer is running on Unanet using our advanced multi-legal entity option, as well as we have things like when you're dealing with a joint venture, because half the times you start out as a joint venture and then you see if you're going to acquire them. things with our subcontractor management solution there. So the key for us is that both organic and inorganic growth. On the organic, that whole win component that we just talked about. And there's also an inorganic side. As soon as you decide that you're going to invest in a particular segment through an acquisition, how soon can you keep that, get that new business that you acquired running the way you need it to run?
Yeah.
And on both sides.
That actually leads me to another question that I guess I had in the back of my mind, and I think it's a two-part question. Let's say, well, it's the same question. So if I'm a small business, GovCon small business, and I want to navigate away from whatever software solution or solutions with integrations that I have, what's a reasonable expectation of my integration into Unanet? And like, what does that process look like? How are you guys set up to make that as easy as possible on me and my team? Because I don't want to go backwards and forwards at the same time. And also, if I were to acquire another company who also, again, is not using the same, I already have Unanet and they don't, how quickly can I get them in? What does that process look like? How much do I need to, do I need to go find a Unanet consultant the way I would with another unnamed software to come in and build this entire thing for me? And now it's like I got a whole new project that isn't paying me to, what does it look like when I jump on board with you guys?
So what we take into account, what we use the term internally called total cost of ownership for somebody running Unanet. So for our customers, we think about these situations and go, if they're first time coming to Unanet, how long it'll take them for them to go live. And it's not just the dollars that you're paying a services outfit, it's also the dollars that you're taking your internal resources that could be billable and tying them up into these, basically getting a new ERP live. We've invested a lot of time in getting that window down to a really, really small amount so that our customers can go live really quickly so that they can focus on what they do best, which is basically time in, bill out for other institutions. On the flip side, the same thing happens when you're trying to either have a joint venture or you're trying to buy another organization. We've built it in a way that the other organization doesn't even have to be on Unanet to begin with. With advanced integrations, we can integrate them in the first 15 days or so that your finance team can actually start to have a lot more visibility into what's going on across all of the different entities you have, including the newly acquired ones. And then over time, what we've noticed is a gravity for the incoming so-called institution or new company. They gravitate more towards Unanet because of the innovation we created where our software kind of gets out of the way. You have to put in time. Putting in time is a chore. We try to minimize that on Unanet where it gets done much faster so you can go about doing other things. Same thing with approvals for your people, from leave to actually focusing on project level approvals or trying to, Rich brought up an interesting point earlier when we were talking, in order to send a bill out to make sure the bill is reviewed correctly so it's accurate to get paid. What the incoming either new customers or new entities are seeing is much faster and easier to do it on Unanet. So we've built things in both from a standpoint at the operational level to simplify it and also at the user level so that they can be delighted much sooner and they see the value in moving on to Unanet much faster.
Yeah. And do you have, I guess, on-demand digital products or training and stuff that they can always like benefit from to like, hey, I need to know how to do this one task. Is there something I can click on and see that?
The thing at Unanet is we really try and listen to our customers. And so what we learned was through customer advisory boards was that it's not how great your functionality is, it's how fast you can educate my employee base so they can get it out. We launched a thing called Unanet University recently, and it's tailored just to that. So the admins in the organization are not inundated with a bunch of questions, and that knowledge trust can be easily distributed across their organization.
Yeah. No, and I think more and more people are taking in educational content that way. And it seems to be much more effective even in my sphere. I've got, I onboard people all the time, and it just, you do the onboarding process, you need to do that. And then afterwards, sometimes it's even more of a chore to try to set up a call to go get some sort of support when you can watch something that's all of 3 minutes that tells you specifically what to do, because you just need to be shown what to do. And it is more important to use it and do the thing that you need it to do at that moment than it is to make sure you have some sort of global understanding of everything that it can do. And I guess that same thing would go if you had a teaming partner, right? If you had a teaming partner that was not on Unanet when you were, or I guess vice versa. It sounds like that's not actually an issue. It's designed so that you can work with anyone using anything.
Correct. And I'll let Rich speak to that. But a lot of the businesses, when they win a contract, will typically go and sub it out to other businesses. It depends how fast they win that contract and how many other contracts they already have won. And we've built it in a way so that you can actually have these either joint ventures or these subcontractors working on your project and still have a transparent audit trail so you can continue to go run your business. But I'll let Rich speak to that side because that's like a straddling line between commercial and government contracting where you're actually doing commercial work for another prime, but it's actually tied to government dollars.
Yeah, the whole subcontracting, or the extent of it at least, is a little bit unique to government contracting, especially for larger companies, because the government requires you to sub out a certain percentage of the work to small or small disadvantaged businesses. Unanet has an entire functionality suite built into the product just for managing subcontractors, where subcontractors can actually submit their invoices right into your Unanet system. It's really impressive the way you can integrate a subcontractor's team or even multiple subcontractors, teaming partners, teams into your team in every way, from time collection to expense reports to submitting the invoices into your ERP so that that invoicing process is streamlined and electronic and error-free. We have companies that come off of other systems, or perhaps they were semi-manual with their invoicing, who tell us they could barely finish their invoicing process before it was time to start the next month. And now they're getting their invoices out with Unanet in 3-4 days.
Yeah. I mean, and that's
actually within a week of the beginning of the month.
Yeah, and we talked about that and how, it's not even just like one day could cost you a month in your payment, right? It's not,
Yep.
and it's not even just, and that means that's going to cost your payroll. It's going to push off. I mean, it's more than just getting money in for the company.
Getting money in is important, especially in GovCon, where a large number of small GovCons especially live on a line of credit.
Yeah.
So when the government takes another 2 weeks to pay the invoice because they didn't understand what they were looking at or it had an error in it, then you got to draw on your line of credit for that next payroll. And interest expense is unallowable. It falls straight to my bottom line. It's not like the commercial business where I could just build it into my rates.
Yeah, I mean, you have to price it so lean just to win, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the more it's becoming more and more competitive in that sense. And that actually, that takes me to another question I had with your gauge reports. And you mentioned that we were talking about suggesting certain proposals that, certain things you can bid on. Are you guys capturing data on proposals and elements within that proposals and structures and things that seem to be more effective than others?
We are. We even go right down, Phil, to the indirect rate pool level. And that's one of the things that really popped out of this year's gauge report. There's a really disturbing trend in the fringe rates. There's been a 4-year decline in fringe rates, and it's most obvious among the smaller firms, from more than 30% in 2019 to less than 20% today. That's a 10-point drop over 4 years in fringe rates. And fringe is just payroll taxes, paid absence, and health and welfare benefits. Well, you can't skimp on the payroll taxes, or at least not for very long. And paid absence, you have to offer that to recruit anybody. So all the decline is coming in the health insurance, life insurance, 401k contributions, long-term disability, short-term disability, all the things employees look at and say, well, that's a benefit to me. I think I'll go to work for this firm. And that's being cut to the bone, and we think it's cost pressure. It's hard to really say exactly what's causing it, but cost pressure is certainly being felt almost across the industry. And it's no different in the commercial world. There's cost pressure everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, look, someone will bid something at $150 an hour, knowing that it would take more like 200, and then just hope they can sub it out and get someone to agree to it. And they can't. They can't even staff it, or they can't.
And if
You
it
can't be profitable even if you did. So it's like, what are we doing? We're just kind of holding on.
and if it's one of those dreaded LPTA competitions, low price technically acceptable, if your competitor bids 149.50, they're going to win. Contracts are being won and lost for pennies, and I think that's putting a lot of pressure on indirect rates. It isn't just fringe. Overhead rates, both customer site and company site, indirect rates are down 10 points in the last 4 years, from the mid 40s to the mid 30s for company site rates, and low 30s to low 20s for customer site rates. Cost
Yeah.
of performance is going down, at least as the way people are bidding it. Whether the actual cost has actually dropped that much or not, it's a different question.
I'd love to hear from both of you, why you're so passionate about continuing to do it. And also, when you help a customer, what do you celebrate the most when they're successful? Like, what do you look at and say, you know what, I'm really glad that I was the person in this moment at this place to help them do that thing?
Assad?
That's a pretty loaded question. So I'm going to try and dissect a few things out. So I think what keeps us passionate is we are trying to take an industry that deserves more and give it to them. That's our big thing. And the second element is we're winning doing that. And that means that we're getting traction, we're seeing success, not just in terms of the number of customers that are coming through our door and acquiring our software, but them being successful on our platform. About 30% of Unanet customers more than double in size while staying on Unanet. To see that growth is pretty exciting because it's not just you're taking somebody and you're seeing them grow, much like an education person where they're seeing and bringing people in and trying to leave them in a better spot. So that's what's really keeping us passionate. Besides the fact that we have an industry that really does meaningful work, and it does meaningful work for what we're all proud of, which is our country. I think beyond that, we have wind behind our sails. We continue to get investments from our board to continue to make the product better, to continue to make our customers, improve our customer satisfaction by investing in the right areas. And we're seeing it. We're seeing our customers grow. They're taking us along for the ride. And it's a lovely spiraling effect that through their growth, we continue to grow.
Yeah. What about you, Rich?
As in the time I've been at Unanet, I've developed a deep appreciation for the technical expertise this company has. There have been many times in my career that I've looked at a problem and I could see the solution, but I couldn't make it happen. We don't normally see that here at Unanet. If we can see the solution, we can make it happen. And the company also has tremendous depth of expertise in the industries we serve, whether it's GovCon, architecture and engineering, or the CRM market space. We have tremendous depth of expertise there. Hardly a day goes by that I don't get an email from a client or a prospect that says, hey, I met you at this conference, or I sat in on your webinar, and I have a question. And it doesn't matter what that question is, whether it's functionality of one of our software products or an industry question. We probably have an answer or a solution. And if we don't, we'll go find it for them.
Well, you know what, Assad, Rich, I had a great time talking to you guys. And before you go anywhere, stick around for Did You Know?
Thanks very much, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.
Before we go, let's talk about Did You Know? Did you know that fringe rates have fallen steadily every year since 2018? They've dropped an average of 27% in 2021. Did you know that a very key GovCon metric called Days Sales Outstanding, or DSOs, have been trending upward over the past 5 years, increasing 15% in 2022? Do you know how your win rate compares to other GovCon firms? About 4 in 10 GovCon firms win half or more of their competitions. This number is continuing to increase over the years. We hope you've enjoyed today's program, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Visit nvtc.org for more information.
We look forward to seeing you at next month's Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. In the meantime, follow us at Nova Tech Council on Twitter and LinkedIn, and remember to sign up for the latest tech news at nvtc.org.